So I want to do a very brief video that I hope will help some of the people I know who tell me that they don't understand economics, they don't understand the economy. I'm guessing that they're probably in the same predicament I used to be. I feel like I have a much greater understanding, but I've taken a very jigsaw puzzle approach, and I'm hoping that a video like this will make things a little more easier. And to understand things, you have to start at the beginning. That's true with any story. So, you've probably heard of the Federal Reserve, the Fed. You've heard of the monetary system, monetary policy, fiscal policy. You don't understand that, and you think that's economics. And if you take an economics course, that's probably what the professors will talk about. And they do study the monetary system, and they should. That's their job. But to an ordinary person, that's probably not terribly useful. So, I like to think of not the economy so much as economy. What does that word mean? Economy of effort, um, you know, economies of scale, things like that. Human beings thrive and survive by manipulating matter. In this case, it's sand, very abundant. You take this sand and you add some energy and some human ingenuity, and you get something useful or something pretty at least. And somebody develops a skill, a rare and wonderful skill, and they can trade their skill for or their products for something that helps them thrive and survive. I would say though that basically the matter and the energy used to manipulate it, what are you doing with it? Are you creating tools or are you creating toys? We've probably always had a little bit of both, but I think for most of human history, just economics dictated for our survival that we put the emphasis on the tools. I would say that's really changed a lot in recent years, though. What's the economy of the Maasai herdsmen in Tanzania? Um, you know, they don't have a Federal Reserve. They don't have a monetary system. They might not. I don't know if they have money. Maybe they have little glass swans that they use, and they use those for money. I have no idea. But I mean, basically, they've just never had the incentive or the desire to change their economy. So apparently, they're working. It's working out really well for them. What do? They move their animals around from grassland to grassland, and they protect the animals, and they live off the animals' milk and meat, and they look very healthy, very happy, got all their teeth. This guy's got a watch, a wristwatch. So there might be a certain amount of trade with modern economies, but they have their own skills, and in this case, they're building a fire. It looks like somebody's decided that is a good use of time is to develop and retain that skill rather than become dependent upon a perpetual fire. But some of the people in the group might depend upon these men because maybe they've gotten really good at building fires, and so they trade that skill for a goat or something like that. And so there is a barter system. At the least, I would imagine there's some barter system or division of labor. Maybe the women, you know, uh, you know, uh, I don't know, harvest the wheat, and the men, slaughter and butcher the cattle. I have no idea. They learn is by example. They don't have formal schooling probably. But barter is very old, and it's started out because it was more efficient. In fact, I don't think it's possible for one person to be able to do all there is to survive. And so it was more efficient, and it just made life possible. Trade. Um, but it got even more efficient with money. We invented money, and the idea there is that if you're raising cattle, I mean it's kind of hard to trade cattle for eggs. I mean you only need a dozen eggs, so how do you store these things? Uh, and then you had jewelries. Maybe you wore the jewelry as a store of value, and the coins you traded rather than bartering. So you could set a price on things. Now you had a price system, and you had price discovery, and you could adjust the price according to supply and demand. And so there wasn't necessarily a fixed price that was always going to be, three chickens for four ducks or whatever the case is. Um, So initially, people liked their money to be a precious metal. That apparently was how they manipulated precious metals. Rather than making spearheads out of them, they made it into money and jewelry. And for a long time, they wanted their money to be fungible, divisible, portable, hard to counterfeit, that kind of thing. It's also probably why precious metals dominated in the form of money. Um, but if you look at human history and you look at how, as people specialized and they went from bartering goods to using money to do the barter for them more efficiently in a price system, and people started to specialize, you started to see non-productive jobs become important. So you have accountants and bookkeepers and people like that. Um, and as certain classes became rich and you had aristocrats, you developed things like universities. And so by 1088, we've got the first university, and people who have time and energy can afford to go to these universities and study chemistry and make great discoveries that develop technologies. So we had great technologies for a long, long time, but we didn't really have massive human prosperity take off until about 1900. So how did that happen? I would say the dominating factor by far is the harnessing the energy density of fossil fuels. And so now the winch that's been around for 1,000 years, great invention. I mean, the winch made certain work just that couldn't be done. It made it possible. But now you can do it faster with fossil fuels. In fact, a little bit of coal is so energy dense that you can move a lot of coal with it. But economics still dictates you're probably going to use the most economical mode of transport. And for moving solids, that's still barges. And that's made possible by the fact that you can take the existing inland waterways and manipulate them a little bit with some engineering, locks, levees, dams, etc., and just make that kind of mode of transportation possible. But something that's even more energy dense, I think second only to uranium, is oil. And as a fluid, you can transport it even more efficiently than by barge. You can use a pipeline. And there's just so much you can do with it. You can make it to various different fuels. You've got byproducts that initially might have been thought of as waste but are now used for other things. And you've got certain materials just were not possible before. So for example, we've always had weapons, but now fossil fuels make weapons like this, which couldn't be possible without them. And it's just a much more lethal and efficient weapon than we had thousands of years ago. And then there's the benefits of the true wealth in my mind, which is modern medicine and things like that. So with modern medicine, we live longer, healthier lives, and it's thanks to plastics, which are pretty cheap actually. And as much as they're vilified, they just make certain things possible. Just look at all the plastics right here with the PPE and the IV bag, etc. I guess they had glass syringes at one time, but I don't really know. I'm certain that plastics just make us so much wealthier. And then there's the byproducts of the oil. The stuff that they probably initially threw in the trash, and then somebody decided, hey, we can use this stuff, and it makes the wonderful infrastructure that we have today. And then there's the thing that people don't realize. We've got what 7 billion people on Earth now, and how are we feeding all of them? Well, we've got much larger yields on our farms than we used to, and whether it's vegetable protein and or vegetable carbohydrate, it wouldn't be possible without fossil fuels. It takes a lot of fossil fuels to generate the heat to manufacture ammonium nitrate. That's where you get the nitrogen. The phosphorus and the potassium, those are still mined. That's still the most economical way to do it, is to mine potash and phosphate, and that takes a lot of diesel to mine it. And so this is often taken for granted, but without fossil fuels, it's just a massive, massive part of the modern economy. I don't know how else to say it. It's just huge. So be aware of that. You're manipulating matter, but now you're doing it much more efficiently with fossil fuels. Doesn't mean that fossil fuels are everything. It took a lot of fossil fuels to make the cement that went into the concrete to build the dam, a lot of diesel-powered machines to build the dam, but ultimately it was economical. By doing that, now you're harnessing the water to produce electricity. Fossil fuels aren't everything. Sometimes they're a means to an end. So I think that's the end of the presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it sets you on the right path. Thanks for your time.